Hello guys, welcome to a new episode of Madibo Hacks. Another tech talk, of course, as I told you in my previous video, even though it was in Spanish. Well, today in our tech talk, we'll discuss high availability in Azure, high availability version 3 in Azure Cloud. Okay, and let's start talking about what's high availability. And, perhaps in the video, I will be repeating the concepts over and over because I think that to learn something new and to totally get it, we need repetition. Repetition is the key to the mastery, all right? So high availability, it's a feature that allows us in cloud to maintain end users being able to use certain services to access applications. And that's on my words, basically. It's very simple, okay? And do not kill me if this is for this thing or for another thing. I mean, do not kill me. I basically know this feature because I help a lot of my customers to configure it, and that's it. I do not go any further. I do not do any designs about high availability. I just configure. Perhaps, hopefully, someday I'll have the chance, to dive deep in perhaps some kind of architecture where high availability, in this case, fits in. Okay, but today we're going to configure it. And again, what's high availability is a feature that helps cloud providers to end users being able to maintain access to certain applications inside their network. And let's start with a very basic design. And by the way, I'm going to use Cisco's public documentation to discuss this with you guys, and I'm going to place that link below this video, all right? So you can access it and so you can match it with what I'm talking, okay? So first, let me share my screen with you, my iPad screen, so I can do a little bit of drawing. And there we go. There we go. Now, let me share my screen. Let me in transmission 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Let's go. Okay. So you can see my screen, of course. So let's say this is a virtual network in Azure. Obviously, this is high availability in Azure Cloud. So we have, obviously, when having high availability, we need two devices. In this case, we're going to have two CSRs, two cloud services routers running in Azure, and let me draw them. So this is our first CSR. This is our second CSR. And in this case, let's say that there's a public subnet and there's a private subnet. The public subnet has access to the internet, has connectivity to the internet, let's say, and we have obviously a private subnet, as I told you, and we have connectivity from our CSRs to both subnets, to the private and to the public, all right? And in order to do that, we need two interfaces per CSR to be connected to the public subnet and to the private subnet. And let's say this is .4, this is .5. Perfect. Good. Okay. So in this little design, we need connectivity to both subnets, and we also need a tunnel interface running between the CSRs. And if somebody asks me like, hey, Manuel, Madibo, how would you divide and conquer high availability configuration, I would say let's make first the configuration like in the Azure console, and then we can go to the CSRs and configure what's needed, okay? And as I told you, we need a tunnel interface between those two CSRs, okay? And not just tunnels, but tunneling involves also a routing protocol, let's say EIGRP, and also bidirectional flow detection, BFD. We need that feature as well. And also in the CSR, we'll need to configure redundancy, and we'll need to specify the next hop of the tunnel interface of my neighbor in both CSRs, right? Now, in AWS, sorry, I was going to say AWS, no, in Azure side now, we will also need to do some basic, enable some features that will allow us to communicate the CSR with the Azure portal so we can change what we're going to change. So we're going to change this guy here, the route table in red, okay? So let's say we have that route there, like a default route. And our next hop for that specific route currently is at 10.104. And what high availability will do is that if for some reason this guy here goes down, dies, like I don't know, an unexpected reload, something happens, I don't know, then the route table next hop will be changed from 4 to 5. And that's it. That's how high availability works. All right. Well, it obviously needs to communicate, right? As I told you, the Azure side needs to communicate with the CSR side. And for that, we're going to use an Azure REST API. Course, we're going to communicate the CSRs using Azure REST API to the route table. And let's say we have some virtual machines here. So the virtual machines sending traffic, if for some reason this goes down, it will take now the new path, of course. That's basically how this works. All right. So now let's go and do some deployments in the Azure portal so we can start configuring high availability version 3. How do I stop recording? Okay. Stop recording. Meeting lockdown. No. Attendance recording. Come on. Can stop recording. I just Right, guys, so we already went through a basic design of high availability using the Cisco public documentation. Now, let's hit Azure console and show you how to configure. And also, obviously, we need to deploy the CSRs before configuring high availability version 3. So let me share you with my screen. Okay, guys, so you're now seeing my screen. This is a CSR, and it's useless for us right now. We need to do another deployment, and actually we'll need to do 2 deployments. So let's hit here home. Let's hit virtual machines, and let's create a virtual machine. Okay, create. Okay, so opening it opens this window for me, create a virtual machine. My subscription is my subscription, of course. Resource group. Okay, so this is like the whole public subnet we'll be using. And let's click here. Manu Diaz, which is my name, CSR resource group. All right, let's type in a name for the CSR. Let's say the CSR YouTube. Okay, I cannot use special characters, so let's type in CSR YouTube 1. High availability 3. We'll use South Central US. Availability options. Now let's leave it default as it is. And image. We do not want a Windows Server 2019. We want a Cisco CSR. And let's hit this one, which is bring your own license. It's not like pay as you grow. That's it. Will be just think about it. It doesn't matter. And this one looks good, okay? And this is quite expensive. So let's try to use the cheapest one. This does, I mean, it's $10 like cheaper, but doesn't matter. Let's use that. Now, authentication type, let's use an SSH public key. Username actual user. In this case, well, you can choose between generate a new key pair to access your CSRs in Azure provider. But in this case, since I already have my own keys, I'm going to use my own key, of course. So I'm going to use this one. Now let's hit next disks. I don't care about this at this very moment. Storage. Let's click networking. And this is interesting, right? Because each CSR, if I review the documentation that you're about to see, will need 3 interfaces. So we will need to either create those right now or later once we deploy this new machine. And here it is, okay? So 1, 2, 3 interfaces in CSRA, and for CSRV, the same. 1, 2, 3 interfaces. And if I return here, I am creating a single network interface. As you can read here, when creating a virtual machine, a network interface will be also created for you. But it does not create 2 interfaces or 3 interfaces. So let's create those 2 interfaces missing later. Now let's do it like this. We'll use the default, the 1060, the public IP, anyone. Yeah, that looks good. Security group. Yeah, perhaps we can configure and tune the security group for this new deployment later, depending on our needs. Let's click management. Next, management. Okay. So we leave it just like this. This one, identity. This is very important because let me explain you why this part is very important. Because at some point, this CSR is going to authenticate. Is going to authenticate with the Azure portal in order to change the routing table next hop of a route we want. So let's click here. Let's click this one. So we'll be able to authenticate once we try a failover. Okay. Let's click advanced. And nothing to see here. Let's see tags. So tags are very useful at some point because they help us to identify our resources. Let's say virtual machines, network interfaces, public IP addresses, I don't know, whatever the resource, we use tags in order to identify objects. So let's type a name here, YouTube CSR1 high availability. Value, let's say YouTube 1. And let's go to review and create. Okay. Looks good to me. Looks good to me. Let's hit create. Perfect. Deployment is in progress, as you can see. Let's open another tab in my browser, and let's go again to the portal. And in the meantime, that deployment is in progress. Let's configure the second CSR because, as I told you, high availability needs 2 CSRs in this case. So we'll need to deploy 2 CSRs. And here I should be able to see my new deploy CSR. Or not. You know, and it doesn't matter, right? Like perhaps we're going to get stuck at some point in the video, but it doesn't matter, right? Because it helped me and also it helps you like how to troubleshoot and how to look things in Azure, okay? So it's very valuable that we can go create resources and go back and move and explore this environment. So let's hit refresh to see we see that new CSR. Okay, yes, here it is. CSR YouTube 1 high availability 3. And let me open my text editor so I can type in the names and deploy our second CSR with you know, using the best names to identify this so we do not get lost in the process. Now, let's create another virtual machine. Yeah. So as you know, now you're experts, we have a new create a virtual machine window, and we're going to use the same resource group in this case, in this very particular case. We're going to use the same resource group. Okay. And virtual machine name. Okay, I got an error message. Your virtual machine must be unique. Okay, so let's replace the 142 and okay, I got rid from that error message. And we're going to place it on South Central US as our first CSR, just for this lab purpose. And image, that looks good, the CSR 1000D 733 with your own license. And we're going to use the same size, of course, a public key. And I do not want a new key pair, so I'm going to use an existing one. Okay, and I'm going to use this one, okay, because I already have stored that in my laptop. I don't care about the storage at this point. Again, we will have to create 2 additional network interfaces. One that is going to connect to the public subnet, one that is going to connect to the private subnet, and another one to connect both CSRs. So in case the failover happens, then we can trigger high availability to change the next hub on the private routing table. Management, sorry. And again, So we have identity here. This is really important because, as I told you before, the CSR needs to authenticate in the Azure portal. So let's click that box. Mark it. Yes, it's marked now. And let's click in advanced. Okay, this looks good. Tags. And let's place exactly the same tag that we placed in the first CSR, of course. I'm going to place YouTube 2. That looks good. Now let's review and create. Okay. Validation passed. And let's create our second CSR. Okay. Initializing deployments. So this is obviously going to take some time, but doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Let's go open a new tab. Let's go to Azure. And as I told you, so we, at this very moment, we have already configured two CSRs, okay? Two CSRs. What's the next step? As I told you, we're going to need three interfaces per CSR. One to connect to the public subnet, one that's going to connect to the private subnet, and a third one so we can communicate with a tunnel between the two CSRs, right? We're going to use that as a source for the purposes of this lab, okay? Now, let's go to virtual machines now. Let's create, no, not a run. Well, obviously we'll have to create a routing table, but let me recall, I cannot recall how to create a new network, interface. Okay, so I got an idea. Let's go to one of our new deployed CSRs. Okay. Now this is virtual networks, virtual machines. Got you. Okay. So we have this CSR here. Let's click it. Let's go to networking tab, left hand. I've already clicked it. And here we have our existing network interface that connects to the public subnet. Now, let's create a new one. So if I click here, this is going to, this is our existing network interface. You can see the private IP address that it currently holds, public IP address as well. Now, help me find that network interface. Okay, perhaps I got an idea now. Let's get here. There must be a tab that it says network interface, networking. What was it? I can't recall this very moment. Troubleshoot. And you know, we cannot just attach and attach a new and create a new one. I have to do something here. And we already hit here and it doesn't show us like anything. You know what? Let's use it this tab. Let's send network. Oh, okay, services. As you can see in services, we have network interfaces. Let's click there. Okay. Now, as you can see here, we have our new two network interfaces, the ones that were created when we deployed the new CSRs. Okay, but let's create an additional two per CSR, two new network interfaces. So let's click create. Okay, perfect. Let's hit our same resource group, that is manudias-csr-rd. Let's click that. And this place is going to be for our first CSR. So it's going to be YouTube CSR1 private. Oh, okay. private, no, it's okay. Private subnet, okay. So that looks good. It's going to be in the South Central US, of course. Everything will want to be there. And subnet, okay, so I don't like this because I already have this I mean this subnet here is already in the subnet in the network interfaces that we already created. We need a different subnet. And let me show you this. So let's go again, not to AWS, let's go again to Azure side. And I already did this, but it doesn't matter. So I'm going to go to this CSR here, which has 3 interfaces. So let me explain myself. So yeah, I go to networking. This is network interface is the one that connects to the public side. Now, if I go to the LAN interface here, we have a different subnet. It's not the same as here. You see, the third octet here in this private API subnet, it's 0 in the third octet, while in this one is 101. And not to mention here we have 200. Okay, so I cannot use this default subnet else because we're going to have some kind of conflict there. So I need to do something first. Okay, let's create a virtual subnet. So let's go to Azure here again, and if I'm not mistaken, we can find, perhaps because I already used that resource in the past, so we see virtual networks. Would that be? I don't know. Let's check. So I think I got something here. Okay. This is like, okay, so we have all the devices connected there. Now what can we do here? Let's do the same, like virtual networks, subnet. Okay, let's go here. The subnets. That's what we need. Come on. Okay, let's go on. And again, we're stuck, but it doesn't matter. We need to explore and solve this so we can get to a solution. And it's fun, like getting to know all services here. Okay, now you see this virtual network. It's created in the South Central US, and that belongs to the CSRs we deployed. And if I click here, I can see the IP addresses and the subnets. Now, I cannot find the subnet page. So we just need to create a new subnet and associate it with this virtual network, okay? Let's go home, more services, let's say, networking, because it's obviously related to networks. Those balancers, no. Watcher, no. Network interfaces, no, because we already have an open tab for that. Come on. Virtual networks, that's what we checked. Okay, let's try to use this example here. So I wrote to this CSR, which I already created these new interfaces. Let's click networking. And if I go here, I'll have, okay, this is the instance that is where it is attached. Now, where did I get this IP address? Where did I get those IP addresses? Excuse me, working. Okay, I become primary. Make private IP. Okay. So I think we should go here under virtual network, and perhaps there we can create a new subnet, right? Because as if you see here, we have a hierarchy there, all right? So let's try that. This is for creation of the network interface. So let's hit virtual networks. Let's go to this one. And subnets. Perfect. So we found it, okay? We have found the subnet. So let's create an additional of 2 subnets for our interfaces. So this is going to be the private subnet, let's say, and let's use 100 here, 10.6.100, 0 with a side of 24. I don't want IP at 36 address space. No security group route table. We're going to have a route table. And you know what? Let's create that route table at this very moment. Okay, so I'm going to open a new Azure portal tab. And here I'm going to place, and we have already got it here in route tables. Let's hit route tables, okay? Let's create a new routing table. And we're going to use again mandias-csr-rg. And our region is South Central US, private routing table. And a difference, let's say here, I'm going to make a parenthesis because in Azure, when we deploy a CSR, I think we already got a public routing table, but we cannot see that as users, as end users, okay? Now, on the other hand, and this is interesting, in AWS, if you create a new CSR, let's say, or a new device, you have also a public, let's say, a public routing table, which you can access to and configure things there. And actually, in Azure, you cannot do that. And if I'm mistaken, please comment here. I'm not an expert. I'm just trying to help you guys configure high availability, and in the process, I want also to learn a lot more about this. Okay. So we have the region. We already typed in a name. It's okay. Probably got yeah. Okay, we're going to place YouTube brief route table. Yes, route table. Yes. Review and create. Let's hit create. Okay. Submitting deployment in progress. We should have it at any moment. Deployment succeeded. Perfect. I like that. Okay. Now, let's try again to create the subnet and see if we can attach it to this new routing table. So I'm going to create a private subnet. Okay, looks good. Let's place again 100 here. No, I don't want IPv6 address space. I don't want any. Okay. There, you see, we have a private routing table now. So let's attach that subnet there. Let's click save, and we're adding that subnet. Perfect. Now, let's create a new one for our tunnel interface. So let's name it YouTube tunnel. I like to use now. This is thank you tunnel interface. No, it's YouTube tunnel interface. Let's use the address space of 10.6.200. Yeah, and no security groups for the purpose of the lab. I'm going to also attach it to the private routing table, and let's create it as well. Perfect. All right, so now what's next? Let's attach this new subnet to our new interface. And let me show you how to do that. Let me walk you through that process. So we have this create network interface, and most likely I'm not going to get the subnet I want. Why is that? Because I have to refresh. I have to refresh the page. But it doesn't matter because I will be on the create network interface. Okay. Now let's use our resource root melody as -csr-rg, and let's name it YouTube CSR1, YouTube CSR1 private interface region. Okay, this is in the US South. So help me find that South Central US. That's perfect. Now we're going to use this virtual net because that's where we created, that's where we created our subnets. And you see, there we have our new subnets. And let me use the private subnet. We're going to dynamically assign that. We're not going to use any security group, and we're not going to use any IPv6 addresses. And let's create a tag. Let's create it like CSR1 private interface and a value of private interface. Private interface 1. Let's review and create. Good. Okay, let's create that. Okay. Deployment is in progress, but guess what? We're going to need 3 more interfaces. Okay, so let's go again. No, I don't want to go to the resource because I want to create more. So let's go again to network interfaces, and let's create the interface for our tunnel interface. So let's go to menu CSR-RE, and let's name it YouTube tunnel YouTube CSR1 tunnel interface. Let's place this in South Central US, and we're going to use the YouTube tunnel interface subnet. Yeah, and let's assign it that YouTube tunnel interface 1. Name YouTube tunnel interface 1. Now let's review and create this. Validation post, create. Okay. So we are creating our second interface. Let's create 2 more. We're just missing two more. No worries. Let's go and create that. And this is going to be for our second CSR now, okay? So, a parenthesis. We have created both CSR, 2 CSRs, and we also have created an additional of 2 interfaces to this point for our CSR1. The next step is to create an additional of 2 interfaces for the CSR number 2. All right? Let's keep my VS-CSR-RG. And we're going to use, let's see. So we have at the left hand, you see, we have the interfaces we have created so far. And if you see, you can see our one of the interfaces, the new one. So let's use the same name, but obviously we're going to change the one for 2. Okay, we're going to place it on South Central US as well. And no, we're going to assign the private subnet, which is the 101 in the 3rd octet. Let's place a tag, and this is going to be CSR private interface. And the value is going to be private interface 2. And let's review and create. Let's create this. And done. Deployment in progress. Use here at the top right of the screen. Now let's create just one more for the tunnel interface of our second CSR. The same. And again, perhaps this is like you're thinking this is too boring. No, but you know, the key to mastery is the repetition, okay? So we need to repeat this process for it to stay in our minds, okay, for long. So let's name this, and again, we can use the left scroll down feature to get to know the name we used for the tunnel interface. Now the thing is that I cannot see that. I cannot see that. Small CSR, no, not small CSR. Tunnel. Okay, here it is. YouTube CSR1 tunnel interface. So I'm going to use the same. YouTube CSR2 tunnel interface. Let's place it, of course, in South Central US. And in this particular case, I'm going to use, yes, the 200 one, the YouTube tunnel interface subnet. Let's create a tag. Let's use YouTube CSR. No, this tag I don't like it. So let's play YouTube tunnel interface 2 tunnel interface, and let's place YouTube tunnel interface 2. Yeah, like that. Let's review and create, and that's it, guys. So we have already deployed 4 additional interfaces for our new deployed CSRs, right? So let's go. I want to go to our resource. What's the next step now? The next step at this moment is to attach those new created network interfaces to our CSRs. So let's do that. Let me, talking causes my throat to go a bit sore. So let me drink a bit of water. Okay. Now let's hit all services, all, and okay, I don't see that. So let's get virtual machines in our search bar. And okay, so here are our 2 CSRs. And do you think we can assign the network interfaces? And ask yourself, do you think we can attach those network interfaces we just created? The answer is no, because first we need to stop those CSRs from running. If you see the status column, the current status is running, and it won't let us touch the interfaces while those are running. So let me stop them. You want to stop? Yes, I want to stop running those machines, and this is going to take a bit of time.